Simon Beyer and Jimmy Jakobsson. They're both from Ingager, a social media company that works mostly with Facebook, or exclusively with Facebook even. And they're going to talk more about social media marketing and the middle line, I think, that I brought up, and that is the importance of measurement and learning. So, welcome.
We're going to change sides just to seem dramatic.
All right, thanks for having us. So when I founded Ingager some 8 years ago, people used to ask me, what will you do when Facebook disappears? That really didn't happen. And raise your hands, how many of you think that Facebook will still be around in 5 years? So that has changed. And how many of you think that your organization or your company could do more on Facebook? Almost all of you, good. So then we can agree on that this is the future and it's important and that you can do something more. So listen closely.
It's part of the future, it's not the entire future.
Part of the future. All right, so just shortly about us, we're some 60 people. We work mostly with commercial clients like BMW and American Express. We focus on the Facebook platform, and that's Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger, Workplace, Audience Network, growing. There's a lot of work to do. We do local campaigns in the Nordics and in Germany, and we do global campaigns. We are very interested in how social media and the Facebook platform affects society, and so we closely look at political parties, for example, and what they are doing and how that affects elections, for example.
Yes, because we understand that Facebook and other social networks and digital communication is just one part of people's lives. So we need to understand the whole aspect of the person and the people and their behavior, needs, and so forth in order to communicate a relevant message. But what you heard earlier this morning was you heard Facebook being mentioned, you heard YouTube a lot, you heard Google as well. And why we talk about these platforms and why we use them so much are because they are big. If you look at social media here, you can see that Facebook is by far the biggest social media platform. Then we have YouTube, which is also really big, but it's not exclusively a social media. So Facebook has the volume, so you can reach plenty of people. It also has a really strong technical background, so you can actually target and use functions that provides you the opportunity to reach people targeting their behavior, which Jimmy will talk more on later. And then you have a lot of other networks. WhatsApp, Messenger, and Instagram also belongs to Facebook, but I would say that they are a different kind of networks because they are more socially interactive networks. And then we have one of my favorites, TikTok, from our friends in China. That is an up-and-coming, relating back to the video and mobile that we talked about earlier. It's really fast, and it's only mobile, and it's only video as well. So that's what's coming along. But talking about functionality, Jimmy is going to talk about.
So this is some homework for each and every one. So if you have a website or you have an app, you need to make sure that your Facebook pixel is working. So who of you know about the Facebook pixel? So it's quite common. People know about it. Most websites, maybe not most, but a lot of them haven't implemented the pixel correctly. And then it will be hard to do marketing on Facebook, the Facebook platform. If you implement it as you should, it will give you answers on what kind of video that works and doesn't, for example. So implement the pixel correctly, use all events, as it's called, where you can not just track sales or something, or downloads, but you can also track what people interact with on the website or in the app. So that's the important thing. Okay, moving forward. This is historical targeting on Facebook. When you talk about targeting on Facebook, this is what people usually refers to. You target women playing golf, living in London, for example. But that's sort of historical data. It's something that people have done. And it's, well, semi-interesting. It doesn't say anything about the women in this target group. Did they buy the clubs for next season or not? That kind of intention, that is what we want to know if we want to do really good marketing. So, and that brings us to the next slide. Actions and behavior, that's what's really interesting with Facebook and targeting for the coming years.
Because understanding the demographics and the age and so forth, that is just one aspect of people's life, but the needs and the desires and things that they actually want to do, that is related to their behavior. And that's why it's so important to be able to understand the behavior and see what kind of actions people do. And as you see in this image here in the background is someone making a purchase in a store. And today you can actually even track that. You can track what's called off-site conversions. So you can see if an ad you saw on Facebook resulted in someone buying something in a physical store. As I say, functions are being developed all over the time, and that's why it's interesting to follow these companies to see what you can actually do on their platforms.
And a good example is that with the Facebook Pixel, you're able to track what people are doing on your website or in your app. But it makes it also possible to find people that looks very similar to those people that interacting or buying or doing something on your website. So have anyone here ever felt like Facebook, they're listening at my phone? Okay, they ain't listening. Forget about that. It's not true.
How do you know that?
Just think of the amount of data that would need to go from your phone to Facebook for them to be able to listen. But it's going to be hard. The sad fact about the listening feeling, it's that you and me and everyone else in here, we're very, very similar to our friends. So if someone talks about the theater, for example, and they start to think, okay, how can Facebook know about this? Well, most likely your friend who told you about the theater in the first place, they had already been at their website, or they are on the same IP network, for example. So, well, they don't listen to you, and they don't sell your data. But they know a lot about you, and they know a lot about your friends, thanks to the Facebook Pixel.
But now we talk a lot about what seems to be out of a commercial aspect, but can this be used from governments and so forth?
So I don't know if you, have you seen that some parties, for example, mostly in my country, in Sweden, it's mostly the right-wing parties, like kind of new parties. They start sort of online newspapers. Most likely it's happening in your countries as well. If you put the Facebook Pixel on newspaper, you could track every article and see who's reading different articles. And then you can basically create ads out of that targeting. Good or bad, I don't know, but it's possible to do. So you can use this kind of tracking to learn more about your audience, but you can also basically optimize your ads on this behavior. And we have again, we move on to the next slide. Yeah, you know about Donald Trump. Have you been at the ads library? So it's a new functionality.
In Facebook, right?
In Facebook and Instagram, launched after Cambridge Analytica, making it more transparent. And that's a good thing with Facebook. Facebook is kind of transparent now. You don't used to be, but it's an American company, and well, we can basically force them to be transparent. The TikTok example, for example, from China, well, a little bit harder to force. That's why it's good with these Western companies. When you go into this ad library now, some would like more information there, but now you're able to basically track how much are they spending. You see that Donald has spent some $28 million last 18 months. Pretty much, a lot of money. And he have a lot of ads running. And if you start looking at the ads, you will see that the target groups are super small. He spends maybe $100 or something on every ad. It's very, very small money.
Is this what people will call hyper-targeting, or like really narrow targeting?
Maybe, yeah. Very, very narrow. But he also acts like, it's hard to see here, but he also acts like maybe an e-commerce or something like that, where he asks people for their email addresses and phone numbers to win a free lunch with him.
That would be a dream.
I mean, it might sound like it's just a fun thing to do, but what he gets out of this is he gets the email and the phone number, and he can combine that with the targeting, and he has a great database. And now he don't need to be transparent anymore. Now he can move that to text messaging and emailing, and the ad library is, well, it's useless.
Yeah, and all of a sudden he controls all the data and doesn't need to be transparent.
So look at this then. He asked people for, this is last week, he asked people for a lunch, win a lunch with me. And then, next slide, he said, take the official approval poll. And that's the week after. Most likely, we cannot see it here, but most likely he targeting people that has interacted with his ad in a positive way, saying that they have liked it or shared it or maybe participated in the sweepstake for winning the lunch. And people that are similar to people that had done that. Very, very strong targeting. But what he also does, that you saw that he has spent millions and millions of dollars on advertising, even though it's not, the election is not really here yet. But if you look at classical parties in my country, in Sweden, or in Germany, for example, they're spending zero money when it's not an election. So they're saving up money for like the election day or the election week. But Trump, for example, and the right-wing parties in both Germany and Sweden, they are always on, acting like a company, gathering data, optimizing, building a team that learns a lot about how Facebook works. Because you don't want to do marketing where you just put money out and show videos to people, because that's useless. You want to show people the right content that people can interact with.
The interesting thing that we saw when we looked at this, is that these kind of obscure parties and political figures, they are the ones who are working as a schoolbook example, meaning they run a lot of tests and experiments, and as Jimmy said, they're constantly learning about how algorithm changes and how different content affects people in different ways, while most parties in Sweden and Germany, where we looked, don't do anything. They wait for the election day when they have to start from zero. And this is something I think that all organizations, NGOs, and governments can learn, that we can, working more on an always-on strategy to not only gather data, but also learn how the platform functions and so forth, and understand the users better, instead of waiting for the next big election or referendum or whatever it is.
So you don't need to spend that much money. Spend a small amount of money every day to be on track with new functionality, new ad formats, and also gathering fresh data, because you know data gets old very, very fast.
And I mean, it's hard to, when you talk about Facebook and Donald Trump, it's hard to not to think about Cambridge Analytica, which could be a great rebus. But what I don't think Cambridge Analytica is the last example of someone misusing social media or a large data breach or so forth. That will continue to happen. But what I think that we can do as human beings and as people working to create a better world is to try to increase our understanding for this, and also see how does the companies and the platform work, and how does it affect them. Because what did happen when, after Cambridge Analytica, Jimmy showed you one functionality, but you could also, as a user, you can change the integrity settings, which is great. So you can now decide yourself on how you want to display your data. And we need to increase awareness about this so people can start using it more. But bad things usually results also in good things and in good changes. And I think this is one aspect of this. And it also affects all companies, countries, and so forth in the way that transparency and trust becomes much more important. And we can see that on this slide, where 65% of users in the States, they think that their data will be reduced by a company in a way they don't wish. And in the European Union is 60%. So on average, people don't trust companies, organizations, and so forth handling their data. That is, of course, an effect of all the data breaches we have seen and so forth. And we need to take it into consideration when we're going to continue to communicate with the users, voters, and members of organizations and so forth. That it's kind of an uphill run at the moment, but if we continue to work in a good fashion, and be transparent and trustworthy, then I think we might gain some confidence back.
Yeah, I'm connecting to some question we got from the audience earlier today, that people, they love these services. People are going to keep using Messenger, WhatsApp, Facebook, TikTok. These are services that people like. They don't like all data breaches, of course. They don't like the uncertainty of what these companies are doing with the data, but the services, well, they will be around for a long, long, long time.
And I think our key message, talking to all of you, and is to think, maybe not politically, but in the way that you work with digital communication, a bit like Donald Trump, and act like a pro. Because as we heard about in the last session, our awareness is really bad at the moment. We can't pay attention to things for too long. So all governments and NGOs and organizations, we are competing with Donald Trump, Coca-Cola, Netflix, and so forth about their attention. So we need to work in an always-on strategy in order to learn and in order to develop. And one thing that was also mentioned this morning was the importance of mobile and video, how that is really key to reaching out to people today. Because I don't need to show statistics to you, but because we all know that everyone uses the mobile all the time. Video is a super easy way to get information, and that is just going to continue.
And video is a very, very good way to get attention. So if someone says to you that video on Facebook and Instagram doesn't work, that's not true. But it will not work for everyone. But for example, if you start with a large target group, say 1 million people, and you show them a video, maybe only 10% of the people will actually watch the video. And thanks to the Facebook tracking, then you're able to target those people. And then you can narrow your target group down and down to the people that is really interested in your service, product, or question. So you have to use it in the way that it's supposed to, and not use it in a TV way or a classical way. You have to use it and track and learn from it.
And we discussed quality earlier, and that's too far left. That is a play on, and now we get music as well. But the content needs to be have high standards, because otherwise people might think it's fake, or they don't trust the company. So it needs to have some kind of good qualities people actually trust it. And to summarize what we've been talking about, it's we need to not only target demographics, but also understanding behavior, and we need to learn about the functions that are there on all platforms, and try to follow the trends, not just the tech trends, but also the trends in the user behavior. So moving forward, when you leave this room in this afternoon, there's a few advices from us. One is to start building an understanding within your organization, not just focusing on the competence, but first you need to get an understanding of what's actually happening. Then we can build a competence, and then eventually we will reach maturity. And think and act like a business in the way that you think like an e-commerce. Optimize your page, optimize the landing pages, try to understand the movements of your user, because we all compete with customers and businesses.
And this is no secrets. Everything you can do on Facebook, just Google it and you will find how to do it. I don't say it's easy, but it's doable for basically anyone. It's out there.
And one thing that we see rising more than anything is expectations from users. So we all need to adapt to the new expectations that user has in order to be relevant for them. We can no longer say what is relevant. The user, they are the ones setting the bar. And once we learn things, we need to share it with our colleagues, with the different departments, so everyone in the organization gets a better understanding of this, because you can like it or not, but it's a big part of people's lives. And again, going after the e-commerce approach, try to identify different digital interactions that can actually move the user or consumer or member forward towards the goal where you want it to do, if it's a physical action or if it's a digital action, but always try to move the user in the direction where you want them to go. And what I personally think is most important is to never stop learning and to always be curious, because what we know is that things will always keep on changing. Tomorrow is going to be different from today. And our biggest bet on surviving is to be curious and always try to learn new things, because that will open up our minds. And an event as today is super, but we need to do that tomorrow as well, and the day after that. If we are able to do that, then we can compete with anyone in the world, I believe.
and Google for the Facebook Pixel Helper, and that will help you set up the pixel correctly and use all the data that Facebook are able to give you. That will save you money and time, and will create better campaigns for you and your users.
So with that, we would like to thank you very much. Now you can look for this slide for 22 seconds, because then our time is out. But it was a pleasure having us. Jimmy, any last comments, feelings?
Well, there will be questions afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But thanks for listening, and feel free to approach us afterwards.